I stared at my phone as tears blurred the screen. It was my birthday, and the man I thought I'd spend forever with just sent me a cold, heartless text. "We're done." Everyone at my birthday dinner froze as I forced a smile, but deep inside, I made a promise. He would regret it. And months later, when my wedding invitations went out, he opened his and saw the name that shattered him, his own brother. Amahle Nyandoro sat at the head of the table, her smile bright as the city lights twinkled far below the rooftop restaurant. She was known for her energy, her elegance, the way she lit up every room she entered. Tonight was supposed to be hers alone, a celebration of another year, another milestone for her growing fashion brand. Her friends laughed around her, glasses clinked. The cake was already waiting with golden candles flickering in the warm night breeze. Then her phone buzzed in her purse. She didn't think much of it at first, just slipped it out for a quick glance. But the words on the screen felt like a slap. "Amahle, it's over. I've met someone else." Her hand froze. Her heart thudded so hard she thought everyone could hear it. For a second she couldn't breathe. The man she had built her dreams with, the man who swore she was his future, had ended everything with a single text. On her birthday, her best friend leaned in, laughing about something, but Amahle's eyes blurred. She blinked fast, forcing the tears back, forcing the world to stop spinning. The table was still full of laughter, but her mind was somewhere else, spiraling through memories, late nights with Kelechi, whispered plans for a life together, promises she had believed without question. She pushed her chair back slowly. The scraping sound cut through the music. Someone asked, "Amahle, are you okay?" She nodded quickly, too quickly. Her lips curved into a smile that felt like a mask, brittle and sharp. She didn't trust her voice, so she didn't speak. Walking away from the table, she could feel the eyes on her back. The laughter quieted, replaced by an awkward silence. She made it to the edge of the rooftop, leaning on the cool railing, the city lights blurring as tears finally welled up. She pressed her phone to her chest, feeling a storm of betrayal, hurt, and disbelief. Behind her, the candles still burned, the cake untouched. Around her, the night kept moving, unaware that her heart had just shattered into 1,000 pieces. And yet, even as her shoulders shook, she straightened up, wiped her face, and whispered to herself, "Not here, not now." She still remembered the first time she saw Kelechi. It was her second year at university, the library almost empty late at night. He was hunched over a stack of books, glasses slipping down his nose, completely lost in his work. Amahle had been searching for a quiet corner, but when their eyes met, something warm sparked instantly. He smiled shyly, offered her a seat, and from that night on, they became inseparable. They spent hours side by side, sometimes studying in silence, sometimes sharing their wildest dreams under the open sky on the campus rooftop. Kelechi would talk about their future as if it was already written, how he would build a home for them, how many kids they would have, how she would run her own business while he took care of everything else. He made her believe that love could be safe, that life with him would always be steady. When his rent was late, she slipped him the money without a second thought. When his phone broke, she used her savings to buy him a new one. Every step she took in her career, she imagined him beside her, smiling, proud. And every time he looked at her with those soft, convincing eyes, she felt like she had found her person, the one she could trust with her whole heart. But if she was honest with herself, there had always been moments, tiny cracks she refused to see. Nights when he wouldn't answer her calls, excuses that didn't quite make sense, texts that came too late and too short. She told herself it was stress, that he loved her deeply, that she was overthinking. She chose to focus on the promises, the plans, the way he held her hand in public, as if she was his world. Amahle built her world around Kelechi brick by brick, never noticing that some of those bricks were hollow. She believed in him so completely that she ignored the quiet warnings in her own heart. And now, standing alone on her birthday night with that cruel text in her hand, all those ignored cracks began to show, spreading like lightning through everything she thought they had built. The music still played in the background, but the energy in the room had shifted. People at the dinner table had stopped talking. Some were staring at their phones, pretending not to notice what just happened. Others glanced nervously at Amahle, whispering behind their wine glasses. A few even looked slightly amused, as if they had seen this coming. There was pity in some eyes, but in others, that cruel sparkle of gossip waiting to explode. Amahle stood near the restroom, hands gripping the edge of the sink. Her reflection stared back at her, mascara slightly smudged, lips trembling. She took a deep breath, wiped her eyes, and forced a smile. The pain in her chest was real, sharp, but she wasn't going to fall apart here. Not tonight. Not in front of all these people who expected her to crack. Her cousin Zinla quietly stepped in behind her, placing a soft hand on her shoulder. "He's not worth your tears," she said in a low, steady voice. Amahle looked at her, nodded slightly, and something shifted inside her. Not anger, not revenge, just resolve. She fixed her makeup with the grace of a woman who had done it 1,000 times, applied a fresh layer of lip gloss, took one last deep breath, and then she walked back into the party like nothing had happened, like a queen, composed, elegant, unshaken. The chatter slowly resumed as she took her seat. Conversation started again, though now quieter, more careful. She picked up her glass of champagne and raised it gently to her lips. From the corner of her eye, she could still see the messages on her phone screen, but she didn't flinch. She laughed at a joke someone made, nodded at compliments about her outfit, and thanked everyone for coming. Her heart was still broken, but she carried it with dignity. Let them whisper, let them judge. Amahle Nyandoro had survived worse. And in that moment, beneath all the whispers and awkward smiles, she made a silent vow to herself. This pain wouldn't define her. It would rebuild her, stronger, smarter, and far more untouchable than before. Days turned into weeks, and the pain Amahle once felt so sharply began to blur into quiet determination. She didn't speak of Kalechi, didn't answer questions, and certainly didn't post sad quotes online. Instead, she poured every ounce of her broken heart into her fashion business. Her small studio in Lagos became her world. Threads, fabric, mood boards, and ambition. Each morning she woke up earlier, worked longer, and dreamed harder. Her sketches became bolder, more confident, more her. The colors she chose told stories of heartbreak and healing, of strength hidden beneath silk and stitching. She barely slept, but she didn't care. Late nights spent alone in her workspace, music playing softly in the background, felt like therapy. Every design she finished was another step away from the girl who cried in the bathroom mirror on her birthday. One morning, after presenting her new line at a local fashion event, she received an unexpected email. A global fashion investor had seen her work online and wanted to talk. The Zoom call turned into a deal. That deal led to invitations to fashion weeks in Paris, Cape Town, and Milan. Suddenly, Amahle wasn't just a local name. She was becoming a rising star. People who once whispered behind her back now reposted her designs, tagged her in stories, and flooded her DMs with praise. They didn't know the nights she cried over her sketchbook, or the way silence filled her apartment like a ghost. They only saw the glow-up, and though she smiled in public, took photos with models, and wore her success like armor, Amahle still carried the quiet ache in her chest. But it no longer controlled her. It reminded her of what she survived, of what she refused to become. Every time she stood before a crowd showcasing her collection, she wasn't just showing clothes. She was showing her story. The girl who got dumped on her birthday, she was now the woman commanding rooms full of power and prestige. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need closure. Success became her silence, and it was loud. The night of the business gala shimmered with lights, laughter, and luxury. Amahle walked in with quiet confidence, her custom-designed dress turning heads as she entered. It was her first big public event since her brand gained international attention. She was there for business, nothing else. Love, relationships, they were off the table. As she admired an art installation in the corner of the room, a deep, calm voice beside her said, "Funny how the boldest work is often tucked away in the quietest corners." She turned to see a tall man in a sleek black suit, his smile warm but his eyes sharp, curious. His name? Oba Nwachukwu. They started talking, casually at first. Business, design, travel, but soon their conversation moved deeper, into legacy, purpose, and the cost of ambition. Amahle wasn't used to men listening the way Oba did. He wasn't just making small talk. He asked real questions, and more surprisingly, he seemed to genuinely care about the answers. They laughed over champagne, debated art versus commerce, and shared thoughts about building something meaningful in Africa. There was no mention of exes, no digging into the past, just two minds connecting, as if the world around them had gone silent for a moment. Neither of them knew the truth yet, that Oba was Kelechi's older brother. The irony of fate hadn't revealed itself, but maybe that's why it all felt so easy. There was no baggage between them, just mutual respect and undeniable chemistry. As the night ended, Oba walked her to her car. "You're not just talented," he said softly. "You're rare." Amahle smiled politely, but inside, something stirred, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not butterfly, but something better. Peace, curiosity. She didn't know what would come next. She wasn't looking for a savior, but she couldn't deny the spark. Sometimes, the universe sends unexpected guests not to change your story, but to remind you it isn't over yet. It was a quiet evening, tucked away in a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city lights. Amahle sat across from Oba, laughter still in her voice from a story he'd just told. The conversation flowed like warm tea, soft, effortless, full of comfort she hadn't felt in a long time. She was starting to believe maybe life was giving her a second chance. But then, casually, Oba mentioned his last name. Nwachukwu. Amahle froze. The glass in her hand suddenly felt too heavy. She blinked. "Nwachukwu," she repeated, her heart pounding. Oba nodded with a gentle smile. "Yes, my younger brother is Kelechi." The name landed like thunder in her chest. Her breath caught. The same Kelechi who shattered her on her birthday. The man who built dreams with her only to walk away without a goodbye. Now, sitting across from her, offering warmth and attention, was his brother. Panic gripped her. Her mind raced with questions, fears, and worst-case scenarios. Was this a setup? A cruel twist? Her hands trembled slightly as she placed her fork down. "I didn't know," she said quietly, her voice shaking. "I had no idea." Oba looked at her, calm and steady. There was no trace of judgment, no hint of mockery or surprise, just kindness. "Neither did I," he said. "But it doesn't change how I see you." Amahle stood up, unsure if she should leave, if she could trust him. Her walls were rising fast, higher than ever. "This is too complicated," she whispered. But then Oba's voice, steady and soft, stopped her. "Amahle, your past with my brother doesn't define what you deserve." She turned, her eyes wide, meeting his gaze. There was no pressure in his voice, no demand, just truth. Something in her heart softened, because for the first time, someone wasn't asking her to shrink, to explain, to relive her pain. He saw her, not as Kelechi's ex, not as someone broken, but as the woman standing right there, powerful, present, and worthy. She sat back down slowly, and in that moment, Amahle didn't know if this would lead to love, but she knew one thing for sure. This man, this moment, wasn't her past. It could be her beginning. The months that followed were nothing like Amahle had ever experienced. There was no rush, no drama, no emotional roller coaster, just peace. Oba was different. He didn't try to fix her. He didn't make grand promises. He simply showed up, consistently, quietly, with a kind of strength that didn't need to speak loudly. He supported her fashion business without ever taking control. Instead of giving advice she didn't ask for, he asked questions. He listened. He believed in her vision, even when she doubted herself. When she landed a feature in an international fashion magazine, he didn't throw a party. He sent her a handwritten note. "I always knew you were unstoppable." They spent weekends talking about design and legacy. Sometimes they traveled, sometimes they stayed in, cooking dinner together, dancing in the kitchen, laughing until midnight. Oba never made her feel small for being ambitious. He admired her independence and made space for it. At first, Amahle kept her heart guarded. She loved slowly, carefully. She had known what it felt like to be used, to be blindsided, to be made to feel like she was too much. So this time, she made sure not to lose herself in the process, and Oba never asked her to. One quiet evening, after a long day at her studio, she returned home to find the living room softly lit. There were no crowds, no cameras, no elaborate setup, just Oba, holding a small velvet box, his eyes full of sincerity. "I don't want to complete you," he said. "You're already whole. I just want to build a life with you, side by side." Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming beauty of being truly seen. She nodded, whispering yes, with a smile that came from deep within. Their engagement wasn't announced in headline. It didn't need to be. It was personal, sacred, and deeply real. For the first time in a long time, Amahle wasn't chasing a fairy tale. She was living a truth, and in that truth, she found a love that honored her strength, her story, and everything she had become. Amahle sat alone at her desk, the soft evening light spilling over sheets of ivory and gold. Each invitation was carefully handwritten, her pen gliding smoothly across the luxurious paper. The air smelled faintly of roses and fresh ink. This moment, once only a dream, now felt surreal. She was getting married, not just to anyone, but to a man who respected her, uplifted her, and never once made her doubt her worth. As she flipped through her list, noting down names of family, close friends, and business partners, her hand paused. There it was, one name she had purposely left for last. Kelechi. Her fingers lingered over the blank space beside it. A flood of memories tried to rise. His laughter, his lies, that text on her birthday, but they no longer held the same weight. Amahle had risen above all of it. With a soft chuckle, she picked up her pen. Her expression didn't twist with anger or bitterness. Instead, a knowing smirk tugged at her lips. She whispered into the quiet room, time to return the favor. She wrote his name slowly, elegantly, in her best script. No rage, no revenge, just power wrapped in poise. She placed the completed card in its matching golden envelope and sealed it with her custom wax stamp. 2 intertwined initials, A and O. The invitation wasn't flashy, but it was impossible to ignore. Thick, luxurious paper, engraved in gold foil. It didn't scream for attention, it commanded it. It was the kind of envelope you don't toss aside, the kind that stops you cold, makes you sit down before opening. Amahle stared at it one last time before placing it with the others. This wasn't about revenge, it was about closure, about showing herself that she had not only survived heartbreak, she had outgrown it. She had transformed pain into elegance, betrayal into power. Somewhere out there, Kelechi would soon hold that envelope in his hands, and when he opened it, he would read the names that would shake him more than any words ever could. Amahle Nyandoro and Oba Nwachukwu, her past and her future, sealed together in gold. The envelope arrived like any other letter, simple but too elegant to ignore. Kelechi noticed the golden edges first, then the wax seal, 2 initials pressed delicately into the center. He didn't recognize them at first, but something in his gut told him this was not just a random invitation. He sat on the edge of his couch, peeled the seal open, and pulled out the card. His eyes scanned the shimmering gold ink, and then they froze. Amahle Nyandoro and Oba Nwachukwu. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. His heart pounded in his chest like a war drum. Amahle and Oba, his older brother. The words blurred slightly as disbelief crashed over him. It felt like someone had knocked the air out of his lungs. He read the names again, and again. It didn't change. His phone slipped from his hand. He picked it up quickly, hands shaking. He dialed her number, straight to voicemail. He tried again, then again. Nothing. A panic began to rise. He opened their old chats, typing a message. Amahle, please. Tell me this isn't true. Let's talk. No reply. Another message. I made a mistake. I was stupid. I never stopped thinking about you. Still nothing. He started scrolling through her social media. Photos of her at fashion events, smiling, glowing, with Oba sometimes just in the background. How had he missed the signs? How had he let her slip through his fingers? He called Oba next. No answer. His mind raced through every memory. The night he broke up with her, the party she left in silence, the love she gave that he threw away like it meant nothing. And now, the very woman he'd taken for granted was marrying the man he always felt second to. Regret hit him like a wave, bitter and cold. He stared at the card again. The date, the venue, the names. She was really gone. Not in anger, not in revenge. She had moved on, beautifully, powerfully, and the silence from her end, it was louder than any goodbye. The sun shone brighter that morning, as if even the sky knew it was her day. The venue was filled with soft music, fresh blooms, and guests holding their breath as they stood and turned to the aisle. Then, silence. Just before the doors opened, Amahle stood at the entrance, dressed in a gown that seemed to carry her entire journey stitched into its fabric. Graceful, powerful, glowing. Every step she took down that aisle was a step away from pain, from betrayal, from the version of herself that once begged for love. Her eyes stayed fixed on Oba, standing at the altar, waiting with calm strength and love in his eyes. He didn't look at her like she was broken or fragile. He looked at her like she was art, whole, rare, untouchable. But at the very back of the venue, hidden just beyond the last row of chairs, stood Kelechi, uninvited, unnoticed, but very much there. He had come in through the side entrance, heart heavy with regret. needing to see if it was really happening. And it was. The woman he once took for granted was walking into forever with his brother. As Amahle passed the rows of smiling faces, her steps didn't falter. But for a brief second, her eyes caught the shadow in the back. She saw him, and just like that, she looked away, not out of hate or spite. She simply didn't need him anymore. When she reached Oba, he gently took her hand. His smile was full of love, of respect, of awe. Amahle took one deep breath, her heart calm and full. The vows began, but in her mind, a quiet voice echoed, not to the crowd, not to the past, just to herself. Sometimes heartbreak is just the universe clearing the way for something far greater. And as the ceremony continued, Kelechi slipped out, tears in his eyes, haunted by the sight of what he lost. But Amahle never looked back. She stood at that altar, not just as a bride, but as a woman reborn, no longer defined by who left her, but by how she rose after they did. Have you ever turned pain into power? Tell your story in the comments. If you've ever been betrayed but came back stronger, this one's for you. Don't forget to like and share. Tag someone who needs to be reminded. Heartbreak isn't the end, it's the beginning.